On this video I'll be making what Banggood sold as the Canton tower. It's an LED tower. There are three variants, one's smaller, one's larger. I think one's 15 centimeters. I'm not sure how much bigger the bigger one is, and one's Bluetooth. I've only found one other video of this one, so hopefully mine will be a little bit better. So here's a picture of what we should end up with. 1 trillion LEDs. I think these are colour changes. In fact, I know these are colour changes. There are spares apparently, so we won't be swapping those out. Do suggest you check each one individually, because there's going to be nothing worse than building a 300 odd LED tower to find that it doesn't actually, one of the LEDs doesn't work, and they're going to be a right bitch to remove and replace. Let me turn some lights out. So that's the LEDs, chip on board. As you can see, they changed speed of colour flash, so there's definitely a chip on board. So yeah, check each of them individually. I've got to double check. I think you have to bend the negative wire. So these will basically go in here like this. And I think it's the negative you bend down, and then they solder to the next one. And so on and so on and so on. And then these will all basically connect to the next level and the next level. And here's our bag of parts. No, there's 12 here. There should be 20 apparently. So we'll look into that. One IC, and this is a STC 15W408AS 1945 HOTP 52.XA 351 SK DIP 28. For you that need to know. One IC holder, bit of hardware. Now apparently there should have been a bit of, I thought there was supposed to be hardware, so this actually stands on the ground like this for building, but I have spares in other places, so I'll use those. There's one switch, one very old school USB socket, 4 LEDs. Let's see if these are colour changes, and they are. So we've got 4 large 5mm colour changes and a bunch of 3mm. These ones actually go in the corners. So when the kit's built, they'll shine down like that. So let me get all this sorted out and we'll be back. Okay, so I've put some furniture onto this bit. Been looking at the board. There seems to be 2 capacitors. This one's got the hash marking on it, this one hasn't. I've got 2 capacitors. They're absolutely sweet FA in the way of markings of values or anything, so your guess is as good as mine. Okay, I've eventually spotted where this stupid USB goes. So the USB goes there. I've got a C1 down here. So I've got a C1, I've got a CP there, whatever that is. Now it's been kind of, depending where you buy it, on IC Station, I think it's Guangzhou tower. And on crappy Banggood, it's Canton tower. So there are 3 variants, various heights. One's Bluetooth. I've got the one corner pinned down with blue tack. The IC holder's already in. I think I'll get that in first, just get that out of the way. Remember to get the notch the right way. If it doesn't, just make sure you get the chip in the right way and ignore the notch if you do it wrong. But if you get the notch and the goalpost the same way, and I'm going to double check this one now. Yeah, we're good. Then you can't go wrong. The blue tack's just to stabilise the board, keep it level, because it wants to tip. So making sure all the pins are, all the pins are poking through. So we'll do one corner, and then we'll check the right, the irons raring to go. So we'll get the first pin done. Check the board. Okay, it's all good. Get the pin the other side done. Okay. So we'll do this end. Need to find a PC extractor fan and get some carbon filter, or a PC fan and make a carbon filter. So that's all good. So we'll just finish it off. Right, so that's the pins all soldered in. That's the IC holder in place. Next we've got a bunch of resistors. I think possibly there's one 10k and that goes down in R13. There is no R12 or R10. So we've got 1, 2, everything is shot here. Let's try and get a bit better shot. There we go. Okay, so we've got a bunch of resistors to go in. So we've got R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. There's no 10 or 11. Or 12. Oh, there is an 11. There's no 10 or 12. There's R11 and R13's down here. I believe that one's a 10k and the rest are 100k. So I'll have to check the resistors. There should be one different one. So I'll just get the tester out and do those. Right, there's a brown, black, orange, gold, which as you can see is 9650 ohms, so 10k. And green, brown, brown, gold, which is 503 ohms. So the information I had before was incorrect. Let's check another one of those. So we've got a 10k and a bunch of 500ks. There you go, 500.8 ohms. So yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take the only video I can find and follow his guidelines. Okay, so the capacitor here, you can see there's white hashing on it. Get up a bit closer. You can see the white hashing there. That's the negative side, which will match the marking on the capacitor there. So the camera can pick it up. There you go. That's the negative. So the long leg is always the positive as well. So we'll pop the long leg in the positive and pop the short leg in. And in the only guide or help I can find, that was 100 UF 16 volt, and the little one is a 10 UF 25 volt, and he's got that down here. He thinks this is a microphone, and his does work, so I don't know which way round he's put that in. In fact, I can see that the I don't know, not happy about this. This does work though. Okay, so I put the bigger cap in. We'll come back to that smaller one. Not sure about that. One side of it goes straight to the chip. No, doesn't actually. Okay, whatever. We might put that in. His works, and if his works, then he can't have got it wrong. And he had the dark side of the moon towards him, so we'll go with that. When there's boards like that, you can see the dark side of the cap. You can't see the negative side, so I had trouble with the other one. Didn't want to go in. So really don't want to solder. I can't solder them to the board, but I can solder them to each bloody other. Right, that's our 13 down in place. Brown, black, gold. Right, that's 3 of the 490s in, so they're all soldered down. I'm not happy with those caps still. Everything else is going on okay. So we've got the 4 resistors here to go in. They're the more 490. That's a mouthful. Then we'll bung in the hardware around the outside, the 4 LEDs, and start cracking on with the template, which I've put the hardware on now. I haven't put the hardware supplied, I've put my own on there, did these nice brassy ones. And I might even look into putting some sort of something together to run that and put LEDs in there once we're finished, because that's a nice clear acrylic. You could get some sort of circuitry into there, I'm sure, with some lighting in it just to shine up. Isn't it? Wow, something to look into for a future down the shed project. So we seem to have one spare 490 resistor. We get one 100k resistor and a spare 490. That's quite typical, really. So we'll just pop that one in. I've got a bit of a wonky one there, but it doesn't really matter. Warm the pad and the component up. Introduce some solder. Seems to soak through these boards to the top of the component, so you do need to put quite a bit on to get a decent leg. So that's in. Right, so that's, I need to poke him down a bit. That's our 490 resistors there. 2 banks of 3 490 resistors here and a 100k resistor there. We've got the 220 microfarad or 220 UF electrolytic capacitor there, and the 10 UF capacitor down here. Now it doesn't give you polarity on this one, but in the only video I found, the black side of the capacitor was facing in with the board in this direction or orientation, so I've copied the same. His equipment worked, so let's just see if we can pop this one in a bit. There we go. So next we'll go for, let's start chucking this crap on the outside. Now this funny sort of button shape will be this infrared, I don't know if it's a transceiver or just a receiver. I'm guessing it's just a receiver. We'll have that up just slightly. We solder the other legs on now. And we can just pop a bit more solder onto that one. There we go. Oh, I really need to get a PC fan. Oh, I've ordered a couple actually. I need to get some carbon filter. Which I'll have a look at in a tropical fish shop for, or a pond fish shop, because I use filters in my ponds like that. Right, next we'll do, well, there's a switch here, so there are 2 switches that go on here. I think this is one out. Actually, no, we won't do the switch next. Next we'll do the nasty, horrible little USB connector with those tiny, 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 tiny pins. So we'll blob that on with a bit of blue tack. Those legs that hold it in place hardly come through at all. So we want to get a decent amount of solder into those first. So let's try and zoom in. Right, so we'll get the 2 tabs done first. It's only got 2 on there, even though there's 4 holes. Plenty of solder in there. You don't want to keep the heat on these for too long or you'll melt the internal plastics. Let that cool. We'll reflow that one in a second. That should be alright. I've got a microscope coming, hopefully next week or the week after, that can record video as well. So I'll record audio on the phone, or video on the phone as well, and then I can split the videos, cut the videos and split the audio tracks and add the audio to the microscope footage, which will be extra handy for SMD work. So that's those 5 tiny weeny pins done on the USB. Next we'll have, oh, we may as well bung these LEDs in. I've got the 2 switches. There's a few things on the board that aren't populated because there are 2 versions, and I think a lot of the stuff, apparently it's a microphone. I don't know whether adding it will make any difference. Right, LEDs, polarity, plus or minus, flat side of the circle on the board goes with the negative because that's the flat side of the LED. So square peg and round peg. Square peg usually denotes the positive side. It's not a written rule, but most manufacturers go along with that. So just making sure you're getting the polarity of all these correct. I don't know what the reason for the 2 switches are. One is obviously power, but I don't know what the other one's going to control. So that'll be a surprise for us all. So we'll pop these in. So we'll do 1 leg each, and then we can align them into the board. So those 2 are slightly proud, which I quite like. Don't know, but yeah, I do like that. Just slightly off the board there. So because this will be like this anyway. I think the legs that you're supposed to use on the template, I've used hardware from old kits. I think those go on here, so that'll be kind of off the ground anyway, ports. But I've got better ideas. I'm going to use these brass ones, so that will still give enough. I'm going to get it into the camera shot. The brass ones will still give enough length above the components to hold it off the deck, and they'll just look better. So right, I think we alter these 2 LEDs so they actually come out the board slightly. Sometimes a mistake actually comes for a reason. Okay, so that's the LEDs, they're all in. Outer holding pins, so we'll give them plenty. These are the ones that are going to anchor it to the board or take a lot of the strain. These pins will obviously help anchor it, but you don't want to put the strain on them. You don't want to put too much heat in for the first time round. So that's 1 switch, and the other one's next to the USB port, so that'll be the power, I guess. So we'll just anchor the center pin like so. And then we can grab our solder and do the outer anchors. Big blob on that one don't need resoldering. And that one. So we'll just grab these 2 center pins, outer pins rather. And we've bridged. Okay, so it's just not a big deal. It's only a ground pin, but not even a ground pin and anchor. This is what we get a desoldering pump for, and not throw the kit away like we used to. And hey presto, we'll reflow that pin. And then we'll just, there we go, jobs are good. So that's how you knacker something and repair it. So it's on there, it's not totally straight, it's not as good as the other one. In fact, I think at this point we can put the chip in and actually try powering this part of the board up, because we have no other components apart from this programming piece, which I'm not sure which of those two it goes in. So let's pop the IC in. Now usually you just need to lie these on the bench, just give them a little roll just to get them into shape, because they're usually too wide. And with the amount of kits I make, I really should get a chip setter. So remembering the notch in the board and the notch in the chip holder goes with the notch on the chip itself, and they just help if you're not using the rubber mat to a hard surface usually works better. I've gone too far on that now. Right, I'll edit most of this out. Okay, that's the chip firmly home. So let's grab some power. So okay, this other one's the power. So we'll power these on. There you go. As I said, still don't know what this one does. But that part of the board's working. Now we can confirm the polarity of these. I'm being advised that what is it? The plus leg goes up. So as far as I'm aware, that these outer rings here should be minus, and the plus is carried down to these T number, T1, T2, T3. So T1 will be that square one there. So I want to try and find a pin quite close to one of those squares, T4, T5. So what am I saying? The short leg is the one that they stand on. So the short leg's going into the, okay, so here we go, we've got a T number there. So the short leg's going into the outer one, which means the long leg's going into that one. I don't know whether you can see that. Get it back on the board. There you go. The LED between my fingers is flashing periodically, which is now confirming that the long legs are the ones that are bent and soldered together, and the short legs are the ones that mount to the board, because we don't want to get the polarity wrong on 200 plus LEDs and be totally screwed. So I'll start getting the next part set up and see you in a moment. But as we have it, I've still got to figure out where the programming pins go, so you can reprogram the effects. I have ordered, I think, a COM port jobby thingy, so I can start reprogramming some of this stuff I've got when I learn how. I really want to get this reprogrammed, the light organ. I want to get a few more tunes going in that, but we'll have to plug a different adapter in. And I haven't got a lot. Yeah, I have. No, I can't be asked. Right, see you soon. Right, okay. So LEDs, long leg, short leg. Long leg anode, short leg cathode. The short legs are going to be a shared polarity between the entire tower. So all the short legs will basically be running as negative supply to the entire board. All the positive legs will be wired off bits of cable, and they'll be basically remotely powered to all of these tier points, T1 to T9. So that's tier 1, tier 9, etc. So basically we've got 9 tiers on this board. So we want to bend the positive leg and find a decent pair of tweezers for this, a nice firm grip on them. Number 1 in. We'll put number 2. So number 2 goes here, that needs to go over number 1. So we'll put number 3 in. So these two we can solder. Because these two, basically, that one's I think there's a good point, because they'll start making the ring now. So if we pop this one in on this one, you see the end's already interfering there, so we can open it up slightly, and you could have to join there just to keep them apart a bit. but you can, I think it's better like this. So if I might cut that one back just shy. There we go. So as long as it's not too close to the negative, it will give us a stronger circle. So I think that would be fine. So we'll snip. So we'll snip this leg about there. Get this one back where it belongs. But we could probably cut that one short as well. This is going to be quite a long video. I want to get as much of this in to help you guys as possible. So let's pop this one back in. I'm not going to solder these two in until we get near the end, and then when I've got like a whole bunch of them in the right orientation, we can start soldering all the others around this side in. So that will go there without falling over. See, this one and this one can actually go together, I think. We'll solder this one to this one when this one's in the correct orientation. But for the minute, that one and that one can stay together. That's perfect. Let's weight the iron up. Right, hobbies are all about experimenting, and you've seen me flux parts and carry solder across. Well, I'm going to experiment with this by adding some solder paste to those two legs and heating that up and seeing if we still get a good join. There we go. I think that's quite acceptable actually. Have a look under the microscope quick. Yeah, they're not, these legs aren't touching. I might try and get a little bit of a gap between. There we go. Right, so we've got a decent gap between the LED and the leg, and they're definitely joined. So if I were to power one of these LEDs, they both should light. Maybe not. Right, anyway. Now we've got this down. And they'll go into the circuit board like that, and then everything else will solder off. This is why the... Right, okay, let's get this first ring done and we'll worry about how everything else works afterwards. Yeah, the negative legs. What are they going to solder to? Right, I'll just carry on with this. I'll do the next one and then we'll pause and I'll carry on doing the repetitive bit. So they're in nice. Let's snip the ends. I'll snip there. Nice nicely. So again, I think we'll just do the older flux paste. Give that heat. And there we have it. We're joined. It's good stuff, solder paste. Don't get it confused with flux. I did the first time, but it was again, that was a mistake that was meant to happen, because I now have the ability, the knowledge and the use of solder paste and solder flux. Two things that you can't solder without solder flux. You need a syringe of this, where I can find the camera. You need a tub of this. You've seen me using it, or I edit most of it out, but you've seen me use it like in this one. And solder paste, SMD soldering, this stuff is absolutely essential if you haven't got masses of equipment. I need to get an infrared oven or an infrared plate. I've been looking at soldering stations with them built in, with SMD rework stations with the heat guns and the soldering irons, but I want one that's got the 30-volt power supply built in. Right, I've snipped most of them off and soldered them on. That's going to drip down. No, don't slip out of place. I've done solder paste because it just made it all so much easier. It just flows together quite nicely in there. Okay. So now it's just this first one. Well, it was actually the third one, but we used the first two to kind of get our pattern going. And then we'll solder these back in at the very end. There we go. So now we have our first ring set up. That one's a wee bit close. As long as they're not touching, it don't matter. So just make sure you haven't got any legs pushed over too far and touching or anything. Then now she won't fall out because it's all matching up, holding on. So there's your first ring. This one solders on to the board, but obviously there's no positive going to the board. This is only negative. Where's the board gone? So yeah, you need to get all those in, all the holes, and then the next level solder onto this, but I'm not sure well how, so I'll have to check the video. So I'm not sure if we're soldering off the next LEDs, for example, coming off this leg, or whether it's actually soldering off the side of an LED. So like that, or like that. Yeah, so I don't know where, yeah, I'll have to go and check the video, but I'll solder this one into the board. I know we can use our cable to run this positive rail down to tier 1, so we could get that tested. So back in a minute. So that's the first ring currently just sitting on the board. It's not soldered in or anything, so it's just basically poked through a little bit. I'm actually going to add the furniture to the board, and then I might just try and visually get this as level as I can on the board, and then solder and snip the legs, bearing in mind that we're going to have quite a tallish tower here, so centre of gravity in that, we don't want it falling over once it's all soldered together, because if you try bending it, it's going to be quite fragile. So back in a moment. Right, when the iron's heated up, I'm going to solder one side, or one leg of each side independently, and then start leveling the board off. And switch. Let's get a look at that. So I'd call get a bit of flux and a reflow, I think. Just get this on a level. I'll hold that one in place. I'll just give it. In fact, the underneath's already got solder there. See what I mean? They're proper blob. There we go. That's bled through and soldered underneath as well. I think this one's a bit high. Like that. Well, I've used my tweezers to go around and just roughly check the height of them, and they're all about right. So we'll snip. No, we won't. We'll solder the rest of the pads in. Oh. This one here. The solder runs right through. That one's been done. That one. So the first layer is wired in. I have tested it quickly. Let's try and get it on the camera. There we go. So that's pretty much all level going round. So I'll get the second layer soldered in. So all of these, again, you'll fold them as before, I believe, but I'm going to double check, and they'll go in on the second hole. So same as before, we'll bend the legs, and that's second hole there, get it right, second hole there, and so forth, second hole there. So that will make the next smaller ring, which, bearing in mind this is quite small anyway, it's going to be a mini tower, but I think for the first one out, I might go for one of those 3D cubes next after doing this. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to solder a little blob of solder just underneath the knuckle on the LED legs, and then solder the just sort of not too tall, you don't want it getting top heavy, but just solder a part of the leg to that on each one, so they're straight alongside each of these LEDs and we're not touching the positives. Then we'll run a second wire up to the second level and crack on from there. Okay, so I've soldered all but T5 in. I think you can see this. So basically I've got a bunch of wires dangling. There we go. A bunch of wires dangling out. That's because it's going to be really difficult to solder those wires in once the tower actually starts getting some height. So that's where we are at the moment. I have got tiers 3, 4, 5 and 6 soldered. So I now have to do 7 and 8, which will be the same as 4 and 5 and 6, sorry. So that'll be 7, 8 and 9. And then the little starry pattern to go on top with a single one on top of that for cherry on the cake. So I'll crack on with this. Right, I'm actually going to fit the third layer next. So I've extended the legs outwards so they fit over the top better. So we'll, as before, we'll just solder the legs to the negative of the one below it all the way around, just trying to keep a decent height. And then we'll solder the power label with the power cable from then we'll solder the power cable from pin 3 or tier 3 and carry on from there. Right, just a quick sneaky peeky, we're on level 5. Level 6 will be going on next and I'll show you how I solder that in. It's a good idea to test each level separately for the changing LEDs if you need to. I've had one or two, well basically I've had one on this level, 2 on level 4 and 1 on level 5 which didn't work. So you need to desolder the earth leg and then cut the positive out and swap it out quick before you do the next level. Otherwise, if you had to change this LED here, you certainly wouldn't be wanting to do that. So that's the effect so far. Let's get the next level on. Right, so we're going to take ring number 6, which was the inner ring of the many spirals. I'll splay the legs out so it fits over the top better, but we're probably either going to have to do this tall or cut them back a bit. So we really want to start soldering these legs to, let's go with a bit of height on this one, to the negative terminals on here. That looks like a good one to start with. It gets trickier as you go up because you don't want to get the negatives and the positives touching, otherwise you end up with shorts and not the trendy kind. Right, so I've pre-soldered a couple of legs. And what I found is a bit helpful is if you get your you can bend your legs slightly just to get them in easier. I've been tending to use a little bit, I want to prop this up slightly, a little bit of solder paste just to melt in with the solder. Helps the leg, makes it easier to solder than trying to manipulate solder over them. Hopefully get an extraction fan solution sorted soon. Right, I forgot to mention, we want to get these wires up through the middle here. So this is the one we want. This is leg 5, tier 5 even. So we'll keep that one separate. Now, I really would suggest that you solder, measure out and solder, or you know, you have to make a rough estimate, all these wires to length before you start actually constructing past the second level, because you really stand little to no hope of getting these soldered in otherwise. I've got to make sure that one is number 5. I lied anyway, it's tier 6, but yeah, that's the one. So what I'm going to do is just get that one prepared, ready for the pad, so I know it's that one. Not the pad, ready for the ring. You solder those onto the ring. Right, so anyway, let's get back to sorting out our tower. Move that too soon. That'll work. Bit of solder paste. Blow the fumes away. So we can cut this one down a little bit, I think. It's going to be all sorts of different heights because it's my first one, so I'm still kind of getting the hang of making LEDs soldered to each other. So we'll cut this just a bit longer. We know this is number 6, so we'll just take a little bit off the end. Okay, there we go. Chin that up. And try and attach it to this power ring, which is going to be fun. So we need to create another solder point somewhere. Like that. So now we should get, let's turn the light out, we should get all 7 layers. Oh, hang on, let's turn the power bank on. There we go. And we didn't get any, oh yeah we have, we got one failure up there. So it's the one next to the power lead. So I need to cut this LED out and replace it. Let's make sure we're putting it into test. There we go, one LED out. So we'll cut it out and change it. Remembering which one it is. You can of course just try reflowing some. There we go, it was working then. And it's fixed. So we've now got all the LEDs working on all 6 levels so far. It's a bit wonky, it's a bit out of shape. I might make it so, do another one so the LEDs actually come out at a 45-degree angle, so instead of shining upwards they shine outwards. Or even have them at 90 degrees. I mean, it's your kit, you can do what you like with it. But I'm just building the first one basically to spec, just as kind of, I did angle these bottom ones out. I think they look better just shining outwards like that. So let's crack on and build rings 7, 8, 9. Now 7 and 8 I'm going to do, they suggest you go, to zoom that in a bit. My information source says you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But what I'm going to do is go 7, 8. I don't know how big to go actually. I want to go bigger than that one, so we might go from this one to this one to this one, or rather we're going to go for the 2nd and 4th rings, so it'll be this 2nd from bottom and 4th from bottom, so we've still got a bit more of an expansion on the top. And then number 9 we'll put this daisy petal thing in on the top with a couple of LEDs on the top of that. We'll have one colour changer, and or I might put one white and one red solid just for the antenna peak. So let's crack on with building the rest of them. So we know what we're doing on the template. Put 3 or 4 on before you start soldering, just to get the right shape. Let's get that back in because it is quite cool. Yeah, basically the next 3 levels and she's done. Quite pleased with that. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of LEDs. You can see it lighting up before it gets to its animation, lighting some of the LEDs up so they're in the right flipping time zone, flash zone or whatever, before they illuminate fully. Right, that's too mesmerising. Could watch it for hours. Here we have the finished product. It's a bit shoddy. It's our first effort. I might do another one. This is similar to the Guangzhou tower, sold on IC station, link in description. That is affiliated. So there will be micro pennies if anyone buys any. Quite a time consuming little kit, but yeah, not a bad kit. Does flash away quite happily. So yeah, not a bad little kit. Many micro welds or solders. Bearing in mind that the earth is carried up through each layer, and it's the positives by those little cables you had to cut short. So yeah, happy with this kit. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.